Now, some of this has kind of been talked about. Some of this is getting clarified. So we'll go through this beat by beat here. Now, first of all, Tony Khan went on Dynamite last night, and he announced once again that he's going to make a huge announcement next week on Dynamite, all but implying, by the way he talked about it with the massive amount of the roster and like how they need more shows, that Collision is likely going to be announced next week on Dynamite. Did you get that impression, Conrad?
I mean, that's certainly what people are saying online. I don't have a good read on what the announcements are. Once upon a time I thought that they were going to announce Wembley, and then someone said, "Oh, it's All In." I didn't know All In was Wembley, so my radar is a little off. I can't really call it. I know there's a lot of rumor about this new TV show, but I don't know even a rumored start date. Do you know that yet?
I think we'll find out. Well, June 17th, I think, is when they're running United. It's a Saturday night show, and with Punk coming
Okay.
back, I think that's the one that people are kind of eyeing right now as the possible start of the Collision show. But we're probably going to find out next week. What I think is interesting is the WBD upfronts are going to be next Wednesday morning, right? So
Okay, there you go. All
so
right.
I don't know if they announce it Wednesday morning and then Tony re-announces it on Dynamite, or if they do the upfronts and they announce that how much money, which we'll get to here in just a second, that they might be investing into AEW, and to expect a big announcement tonight on Dynamite. But it seems like the timing here is all lining up for next Wednesday for some kind of big announcement to be made.
Man, I don't really know what to expect. As I'm looking on the AEW TIX website, they don't even have tickets on sale for that United show, so they're hoping they can announce it and sell it out in less than a month, huh?
They kind of did that with Punk though, with the
Well,
Last Dance.
I get that they did that the first time, but I mean that's a big arena to sell out very, very quickly. I'm not saying they can't do it. I'm just saying if that's the first one, man, that doesn't give them a ton of time.
No, it doesn't. But we in Chicago, we get spoiled so much with AEW content. Like they're here usually multiple times a year. Now, it
Yeah.
has been noticeable that following the return performance of the Elite, where they mocked everybody in Chicago and whatever, we haven't seen AEW back in the Windy City since. So it has been a little bit longer stretch here than usual for us with regard to AEW content. But I just think, man, I don't underestimate AEW fans anymore. If there's some big story that they can be a part of, it'll be part of the history of AEW,
Yes.
they'll mortgage their house, right?
Well, I hope not. I mean, I hope not. But yeah, I mean, I think that's great. I mean, I do agree with what you're saying, and that they've got a hugely loyal fan base. And when I first started advertising my mortgage company on the radio like 15 years ago, I tried like the biggest station in town and got no return. And then I tried a small sports talk station, and man, it blew up. It was a massive success. And so what I learned from that was it doesn't necessarily matter to me as the advertiser how big the audience is. What matters more is how engaged are they? And that much smaller talk radio audience was much more engaged than that much larger audience on the major station. So I'm saying all that to say there are a lot of AEW diehards, and they are nothing if not loyal. So I think they can do it, especially with the excitement about a potential Punk return. And man, this is a great time for the wrestling business. Look at what WWE just did. And if the rumors are true for AEW, this could be maybe the biggest year in wrestling history when you think about it.
I think this could be the biggest quarter in
Yeah.
wrestling history. I
Well
think,
said.
Q2 into Q3, 2023 is, I mean, this is a transitive time for
Yes.
professional wrestling. It's not, it's the summer of everyone, really. We're all going along for a ride here. And and I love how you talk about how that target audience, right? And how, and you can motivate them to, you can engage them to action, right? And WBD has been really great about that with AEW. I mean, the 60,000 tickets in Wembley is certainly its own kind of statement. But you see how WBD, anytime they've had a project kind of like Shark Week or whatever, Tony Khan is with open arms, welcomed the opportunity to take his very, very loyal fan base of people
Yes.
that want to be engaged and say, go watch these shark shows. And I bet a fair amount of them do, because they want to support AEW. And if that's what AEW is saying that they could do to support AEW and the brand, they'll probably go watch more sharks,
Well, let me say this. If there is a shark initiative coming down and we don't get Shark Boy on the show, it's a missed opportunity.
Goddamn, pal. Hell yeah. I agree with you.
I'm just saying.
Tadpole drinking. So the expected announcement here, Collision, it's probably gonna coincide with the upfronts, and it's probably gonna coincide with some kind of an announcement about a new TV rights deal that's going to encompass Dynamite, Rampage, and Collision. And this is something I finally get to talk about now that this report is about, because I had heard this number floated out a couple weeks ago from a source that I consider to be pretty reliable. Now, I had not had a second source be willing to even touch what I'm about to say with a 10-foot clown pole, but I was told a couple weeks ago that Tony Khan could be getting $1 billion in this next TV rights deal. And it's not like for a year, right? It'd be stretched out over a couple years. Now, WWE did 5 for Fox, right? So it's not like there's never been $1 billion TV rights deal. Maybe Tony could get it over 10. I don't know about 5, but a 10-year, $100 million commitment per year, valued at $1 billion. I think that's in the realm of possibility right now, Conrad.
Well, the thing that always struck me as noticeable is all of the All In marketing material. Nowhere does it say on pay-per-view.
No.
Usually it says the word pay-per-view, and it didn't. So I thought to myself, does this mean it's going to be on HBO Max or some other streaming app, or where is this going to be? And so when these rumors started to pop up that maybe this is a part of a larger deal, I just thought, man, high fives all around. Tony's had this vision for a long, long time. And the idea that something he thought of in 2018 is now possibly going to be putting pen to paper on an 8-figure deal. I mean, a 9-figure deal, a 10-figure deal. I mean, like that would have, when you really think about just where wrestling was in 2018 and now, the idea that you could just sign a $10 million contract would have been crazy, because nobody was getting television deals like that besides WWE. And then to fast forward and say, well, no, move that decimal. Okay, now move it again. Now move it again. It's like, wow, congrats, Tony and crew. Way to go.
Man. Yeah, and it is, if this does come to pass, and you've got Tony Khan putting out a $1 billion TV rights deal, securing AEW spot on TNT and TBS for the next decade. All arguments are put to bed, right? And yes. Truthfully, now that everybody knows what everybody's doing, right? I think that all the behind the scenes navigating recently has made a lot more sense, because from what I have heard, Tony has been really wanting to get that $1 billion deal, and that's where the idea for Collision, I believe, kind of came from. I don't think it was about, I need to create another show to keep Punk and the Elite apart. I don't believe that. I believe Tony wanted $1 billion, and Warner Brothers Discovery said, if you want $1 billion, here's what's going to take you to that $1 billion number. First of all, we're going to need the second flagship show. We're also going to need all the streaming rights to your shows. No more of this YouTube stuff, and we get the archives. I think this thing is, if it comes to pass as it has been kind of buzzed about to me, it's going to be massive, dude. It's going to be very, very big business for AEW.
They did a show a long time ago too, like the very first AEW house show, I guess, at Daly's place. They filmed that and never released it. And as I understand it, the first traditional House Rules event, I think they had cameras there too. So it'll be interesting to see, are we going to see more of that content there as well? Like some of the stuff where there's been a lot of criticism of Tony Khan, I think folks are going to realize, hey man, my dude was playing chess, not checkers. Bravo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and however you got there, right? You can't say everybody made 100% of the right moves here, but what did happen was Tony was smart enough to get the right people around him that have value and focus on those people. And one of those people here that I'm sure WBD said, if we're going to give you $1 billion, we need Punk back, right? This guy is a TV draw. You've got him under contract, use him or lose him. Right. So I think that Punk probably got pulled in that way. Either WBD wanted him, or Tony said, here's a way I can offer more value. And he threw his Punk's name out there. Either or, it doesn't matter. Punk's name got thrown back into the mix as a means of value here. So there was the report that was coming out about Punk having a meeting with Jericho. Now, Fightful's got this new story out, like we said. And much like I've been saying, I don't believe necessarily that Jericho is going to be Punk's first opponent back. From the way that Fightful's saying it sounds to them like Punk is advocating for a different opponent, a big return opponent that is not Chris Jericho. And that is more in line with what I have been hearing, because I don't think Punk likes or wants to work with Jericho, regardless of how much Chris wants to be the locker room leader right now, you know?
So, man, you're saying a lot of words here. Are these your reports, or I mean, have you confirmed that someone on one side of that table asked for Punk or mentioned Punk, or is this
No,
just
no, no. This was. I believe it started with Keller, and it was Dave. It's the fact that this meeting was happening, and I've talked to people that are close to this situation too that tell me the plan is for Punk and Jericho to work together. That's always been the plan. That's the hope here, and I never believed it based off of what I know about or have heard about what Punk feels about Jericho. I never believed it. And so I've been sitting here saying, I think that the odds are that meeting was more about them trying to share a locker room and make sure they're going to be cool together. But,
right?
but a lot of people seemed, I have a bet for a slice of pizza with somebody in the know that claims up and down that Jericho was going to be Punk's return opponent. I just don't buy it. I don't think so, Conrad. I don't think it's going to go down like that.
I think Punk will wrestle whoever. I mean, Punk on the Starcast stage, his first time doing anything with wrestling again. He said his biggest regret was he took stuff personally. He should have just did it more for the money. You
Yeah.
know, and the reality is, you know, this circumstance that has existed for several months now, a lot of this, I think, can be squashed and can be worked out. And I'm glad it looks like it's headed in that direction. But I'm of the opinion, man, what fans want to see is what they want to see. Give it to them. And if we believe, we want to suspend our disbelief. You know, I'll never forget being excited when Matt Hardy wrestled Edge, 18 years ago or whatever it was, because it was like, okay, now that could be real. That's what we want. Like, we want to suspend our disbelief. And I can totally see those guys working together. I think Punk is one of the most professional guys I ever worked with. I had a great experience with him at Starcast, and I think he's been maybe miscast in some of this stuff. Again, I don't know all the info. You know him much better than I. I wasn't there. I'm excited at the possibility of him being back. I didn't know it was a bargaining chip for television. Maybe that is the case, but
I've heard it was at least I've heard the value of Punk was at least brought into the conversation. I'll put it that way.
Let me just say this from a P&L standpoint, as a business owner, I don't think anybody thinks he's there for the quote unquote NFL roster minimum. He's one of your highest paid guys. He's a top guy based on taxes. So then by all means, we got to get a return on that investment. I would make Punk a big part of whatever show I could make him a big part of.
It is unfortunate that these sites haven't been able to bury the hatchet, but as is being reported and kind of what I'm hearing right now, I don't know that hatchet, I don't know that we're close to picking up the shovel to bury that thing. You know, I know a lot of people want it. I'm looking down the pipe at how does this play out, right? If there is the inability for these guys, as Meltzer reported just this past week, he's like, well, if Punk's on Collision, then the Bucks won't be there. But if he's not on Collision, then the Bucks will be there. It's a huge distraction,
I think it's kind of silly. I think eventually guys will get in the same room and they'll work it out. I hate to be so point blank about it, but I mean, listen, most of us don't get to pick who we work with. If you are a regular dude working a regular job, you don't get to pick everybody you work with. You like some guys better than others. You have some work friends, you have some acquaintances, and you have some people you try to avoid. That's normal. And I don't think it's always been a harmonious locker room going back to the beginning of time in professional wrestling, or even the beginning of AEW. So I know that this has been played out in the media, maybe a little more than it should have been, but I think everybody will get together and it'll be fine. I mean, what we should be talking about is my man's going to get $1 billion freaking dollars allegedly. That's
Maybe.
What's more important. We'll figure out the rest. Like, high fives all around. Let's take the win.
If there was ever a reason to tell everybody to shut up, stand up straight, look professional, we gotta rob the bank before we can divvy up the cash, guys. So
it's a great time to be in AEW. I think a lot has been made of this, and I know it's been good for the buzz and the chatter and the clicks and all that jazz. But the headline should certainly be a new show and a boatload of cash, y'all. Come on.
But that's the thing, Conrad. And this is really the story of this story, is that at no point has anything have they been able to stitch up the wound. And the distraction of this huge open wound continues to be the discussion. It was the discussion once word broke about Punk and Cabana having whatever issues and Cabana being slotted wherever. and that story didn't get squashed, right? That pissed Punk off. Then Punk goes out there, opens the wound even more. Then we have a physical fight, right? Now the wound has been pried open even more, and we're still not having to the point where the arms are being wrapped around this situation. These guys are working together. It has been more than a year of this where it's just like this distraction would go away if you would all just stop sniping at each other, but they're not, and that's why it's still the story, you know.
I'm not there. I can't speak to the conjecture of what has or hasn't happened. All I know is in the end, everybody's there to make money. Like nobody just shows up there randomly because they want to have a good time. They're not there to volunteer their time. They're there to do a job and get paid. And now, with if these stories are true, there might be an opportunity for you to do an even better job and get an even better paycheck. That should be the priority. And I don't really know what's happening or not happening behind the scenes with the drama. I know it makes for some good reading, but in the end, I'd rather focus on the stories that are happening on camera. And before you know it, that AEW pay-per-view is going to be here, man. They got so much going on. Sort of lost in the shuffle is we're a couple weeks away from one of their biggest events.
Yeah, and I read the WrestleTix report that ticket sales have dramatically slowed. I don't think that show is sold out. I think they've only sold like a couple hundred tickets in the past couple weeks. It is, I think what it is everybody's looking past Double or Nothing to Wembley. And if the main event was stronger, I think that wouldn't be an issue. But I don't think, Bet Online put out their odds. They got MJF at 98% to win this thing. I just don't think anybody is buying into that main event right now or has any believability that either of these three are going to beat MJF.
Double or Nothing has been one of their marquee events since the very beginning. And it would be a shame if that one just got overlooked. I mean, I think a lot of people even look at that since it was their inaugural event. That's almost like, their WrestleMania. Now, certainly All In becomes that, but just because of the stature of Wembley Stadium. But man, I hope this one doesn't get lost in the shuffle because this is a big event and it's always, I've got my plans of where I'm going to watch it with and who I'm watching it with. I'm fired up for it because they always bring out a good show for Double or Nothing. But I do admit, it feels like the buzz is around everything else. It's around All In. It's around the new TV deal. It's around the backstage drama or whatever it might be. So there's lots of other chatter that I think has served almost as a distraction for their big premium live event coming up in a couple of weeks.
That's what I've been trying to say. It's all these distractions, right? Like, WWE has its faults, obviously. But one thing they've done a great job of recently is quelling these kinds of issues,